Chronicles of Ardenthal. Episode 7. The Threshold Before. There was no ceremony in the courtyard the next morning. That was good. Alina had barely slept during the night, yet she did not feel tired in the ordinary way. It was not the heaviness of too little sleep, but the tension of a thought that would no longer leave. The group in the old storeroom had not been a conversation one could later forget. Names had been spoken, tasks had been given, and with each of those names, something had been set in motion. She went down early. The courtyard was already alive. Women carried water, children brought wood, old men stood along the edges and gave advice that was sometimes useful and sometimes only habit. The stable smelled of hay and leather. From the kitchen came the scent of thin soup. In the northern wing, the wounded were being tended. Ardenthal lived on, but that living had the sound of work, not safety. Alina stood still for a moment and looked across the courtyard. She was not looking for heroines. She was looking for gaps. Who was missing at the wagons? Who carried too much? Who knew what to do without being told? Who stood in the way because they wanted to help but had no place? Since the evening before, she saw differently. Not more harshly, but more precisely. She did not like it in every moment. People were suddenly not only people, but possibilities, risks, abilities. She caught herself studying hands, shoulders, ways of walking, glances. It felt cold until she understood that it was not coldness, it was responsibility. Serafina stepped out of the southern wing. She wore dark cloth, simply bound, without jewelry. Her gaze found Alina at once. "You have already begun," she said. "I am only looking." That is often the most dangerous beginning. Alina did not answer at once. She knew Serafina was right. To see meant not to be innocent anymore. Whoever sees cannot later claim that they did not know. "We need 3 more, Alina said. Serafina stood beside her. "For the fast group?" "Yes." "And for the larger one?" Alina looked toward the women standing at the well. "The larger group is already forming. It simply does not know it yet." Serafina followed her gaze. "You must handle that carefully. People follow a task more easily than a name. Then we give them tasks. And no name." Alina nodded. She knew what Serafina meant. If one called it an army, the council would fight it before it could walk. If one called it supply, transport, protection, return routes, care for the wounded, watch and field order, then it was work. And work was difficult to forbid in Ardenthal now. The first 3 of the day did not come to her. She went to them. The first was called Maela. Alina found her behind the kitchen, where she lifted 2 large water buckets as if they weighed less than they looked. Maela was not striking in a courtly sense. She was broad-built, with strong arms and a face that gave little away. She was not a cook, though she worked there. She came from one of the river villages, and in recent weeks had carried loads for which 2 men would otherwise have been sent. "Maela," Alina said. The woman set the buckets down. "Your Highness, you can carry." Maela looked at her, then at the buckets. "That can be seen. You can also walk while you carry." "One would hope so." Alina did not let the dry answer throw her. "I need someone who can move burdens without making a scene of it. Wounded people, water, tools, perhaps people who can no longer walk on their own." Maela wiped her hands on her apron. "You are not speaking of kitchen work." "No. And you are not speaking of today." "Not that either." Maela looked out toward the courtyard. "My husband is not at the front. He died 2 winters ago." Alina had not known that. She waited. Back then I learned that you do not lift someone from the ground with grief, Mela continued. You need a back, arms, and someone who does not ask whether it is heavy. That is exactly why I am here. Mela was silent. Then she nodded once. Tell me when. Tonight in the storeroom. Good. The second was called Irma and was older than the others. Alina did not find her in the courtyard, but in the northern wing. She sat beside one of the wounded men and changed a bandage with movements so calm that the man did not even clench his teeth. Irma had grey hair hidden tightly beneath a cloth and hands that looked of lye, herbs, and work. Elder stood beside her and watched. She is better than I am, Elder said before Alina could ask. Irma did not look up. She is younger. That is not the same. The wounded man laughed softly and regretted it at once because the movement pulled at his side. Alina waited until Irma had fastened the bandage. I need you, she said. Irma rose slowly and studied her. For what? For the wounded. You already have those. For the road, Irma snorted. Every bandage is worse on the road. That is why I need someone who can apply even a bad bandage properly. Irma looked to Elder. Did she teach you that? Elder shook her head. She comes to it on her own. Irma turned back to Alina. I do not run through forests. I am not asking that. You do not belong to the fast group. But the fast group needs someone who says beforehand what they must carry, and the larger group will need you if we bring someone back. For the first time, Irma's face changed, not softened, but became more serious. If, she said. Yes. Irma looked past Alina to the men on the straw pallets. You believe you can bring them back? I believe waiting will not bring them back. After a while, Irma nodded. Tonight. Tonight. Then Elder comes too. Alina looked to Elder. Elder is already with us. Irma tied her cloth more firmly. Good. Then at least one of you has sense. The third was more difficult. Her name was Neela, and Alina knew her only by sight. She worked in the lower quarter with the rope makers. Narrow, quiet, with long fingers that tied knots faster than others could untie them. She was no fighter. No one would have chosen her if they were looking for strength. That was exactly why Alina sought her. Nella stood in her father's workshop. He was too old to stand for long, but too stubborn to sit. Ropes hung from beams, coarse lines for wagons, finer ones for loads, thin braided cords for things Alina could not immediately name. Your Highness, said the old robe maker and began to bow. Please remain as you are, Alina said. Neela looked up from her work. Does the castle need rope? Yes, Alina said. But not only that. Neela set the cord aside. What else? Someone who knows what rope can do. The old man laughed dryly. Hold and tear, depending on who uses it. Neela gave him a brief look. Then she looked back at Alina. For what? Alina did not answer immediately. She looked at the ropes on the walls. For wagons, for stretchers, for doors, for slopes where one must not fall, for people who must be moved without injuring them further. Neela grew still. That is not an ordinary order, she said. No. And it is not a question about rope. No. Neela took the thin cord in her hand again, drew it through her fingers, and then placed it carefully on the table. I cannot fight, she said. I did not ask that. Many ask it first. I ask it last, if at all. Neela looked at her for a longer moment. Tonight. Alina nodded. I will come. When Alina left the workshop, she knew that the 10 would not be alike. That was the point. Mara could read roads. Leo could read people. Taren could disguise movement. Jonna could wait and strike. Elder could recognize the limits of the body. Berit could open, strengthen, or break things. Sanna could read voices. Mela could carry when others only stood horrified. Irma could hold the wounded together. Neela could bind, secure, and loosen. It was not a group of heroes. It was a toolbox made of people. The thought frightened her because it sounded too sober. Then she thought of Arvid in captivity, of the wounded men in the northern wing, of Henrik, of the letters that grew fewer. Sobriety was perhaps not coldness. Perhaps it was the only way not to lose warmth to panic. In the afternoon, the larger preparation began, not officially. The women who drew water at the well received new assignments. 2 were to practice with the wagons from now on, not in the courtyard, but behind the storehouses. 3 were to pack supply bundles and unpack them again until they knew what was needed in which order. 4 older women were asked to keep lists of blankets, cloths, needles, clean knives, and portable pots. No one said what for. It was remarkable how much one could move when one did not call it movement. Rena worked in the northern wing. Alina saw her there late in the afternoon. She sat beside a wounded man, held a bowl of water, and looked as if she had spent the last hours not running away. Her eyes were reddened, but she stayed. When Alina entered the room, Rena looked up.
"I am still here," she said. "I can see that. I am not weak. I never said that."
Rena looked back down at the bowl. He called for his mother in his sleep. Alina stepped closer. "Who?" "The one with the shoulder." Alina knew his name. Ewald. "What did you do?" "I told him she was coming, even though I do not know whether that is true." Alina did not sit. Sometimes someone needs a voice before they need truth. Rena looked at her. There was less anger in her gaze than the day before. Not gone, only bound differently.
"May I come tonight?"
she asked. Alina did not answer at once. She could have said no, and part of her wanted to. Rena was young, angry, and too close to her own pain. But she had not left the room. She had seen wounds and stayed.
"Not for the fast group,"
Alina said. Rena nodded before the sentence had fully faded.
"For something else." "Yes." "Then I will come."
Alina left the northern wing with the feeling that selection was never finished. One could refuse someone, but that did not mean one lost them. One only had to know what to do with what burned inside them. That evening, the storeroom was fuller than the day before. Not loud. No one laughed. No one entered with grand words. People came alone or in pairs, remained along the walls, found places from which they could see and listen. The 10 did not stand together, and yet Alina recognized them. Mara, Leo, Taren, Jonna, Elder, Berit, Sanna, Mela, Irma, and Naila. Irma and Naila. Others had come as well, women who did not belong to this fast group and yet were necessary. Rena stood with Elder. 2 women from the kitchen stood beside Mela. 3 from the riverbank village had gathered near Naila. Berit had brought 2 younger smithing apprentices who officially only meant to carry tools. Alina did not count aloud, but she counted. They were not yet 100. But they were enough to understand that 100 was possible. Serafina came last. This time she remained at the door. She left the center to Alina. Alina stepped forward. "Yesterday we were few," she began. "Today we are more, and for precisely that reason it must be clear that not all will do the same thing." She looked around the room. Some will go. Some will carry. Some will tend. Some will pack, count, cook, sew, drive, wait, and bring back. None of these tasks is smaller than the others. Whoever believes only the foremost line matters has not understood war. No one objected. We begin tomorrow with simple things, moving in groups without standing out, carrying loads without getting in one another's way, moving the wounded without killing them, loading wagons so that what is needed first can be reached first, remaining silent when questions reveal more than answers. Berit nodded clearly at that last point. Alina continued. No one leaves Ardenthal without permission. No one seeks their own roads. No one proves courage at the expense of the others. Whoever breaks these rules does not come with us. A woman in the background asked, "Come where?" The question was quiet, but the room heard it. Alina looked to Serafina. The queen did not move. She gave no sign, yet her presence was answer enough. Alina turned back to the room. "Where we are needed, when the day comes." That was all she said. It was enough. After the short address, no exercise with weapons began. Instead, Berit placed 3 old locks on a barrel and explained why force was often slower than patience. Neela showed how to tie a knot that held, but could still be undone quickly. Mela had 2 women try to carry a straw sack filled with stones, and after only a few steps, it became clear that strength without coordination produced only bruises. Irma corrected the way one supported an arm. Elder showed when someone must not be moved. Jonna said almost nothing. She stood by the window and had 3 women describe, one after the other, what could be seen outside. The first named torches and walls. The second named the guard. The third noticed that the guard was not the same one as yesterday. Jonna nodded at the third. Mara led Leo, Rena, and 2 others through the rear passage and then had them described the same way afterward. Rena forgot a side door. Leo did not. Taren stood near the wagon plans at the end and explained how to pack a load so that it looked like provisions, while leaving room beneath for tools. Sana listened to him and after 3 sentences noted that he spoke more slowly every time he concealed something important. "You do that often," she said. Taren looked at her. "What? Slow down when you hope no one will ask." Berit laughed, and this time some laughed with her. The tension did not vanish completely, but it found air. Alina watched. This was not an army, but it was no longer accident either. It was a beginning that had gained hands, voices, mistakes, corrections, and the mistakes reassured her more than smooth promises would have done. Whoever stumbled here could learn. Whoever stumbled out there might die. Later, when most had gone, Serafina remained with her. "You promised them no hope," she said. "Should I have?" "No." Alina looked at the barrels, the locks, the ropes, and the marks on the floor. "I do not know whether this will be enough." Serafina stepped beside her. "No one knows that." "Then it is hard to continue." "Yes," Serafina said. "That is why so few do." Alina carried that sentence with her as she left the storeroom. The courtyard was dark. The old guard stood at the gate, and this time he held the spear a little differently. Perhaps someone had shown him how the weight sat more easily. Perhaps he had discovered it himself. Alina did not stop. She went into the west tower and looked out. Ardenthal lay quiet beneath her. The fields were dark, the river barely visible, the roofs of the town only lines in the night. Behind her, inside the castle, lay the letters, the lists, the wounded, and the maps. Beneath her, something had begun that was not yet allowed a name. She thought of her father. She thought of Mathis. She thought of Henrik, who had not wanted to be afraid. Then she thought of the 10. Not of their courage, but of their tasks. Tomorrow, they would practice. Not for glory. For return. On the morning after the first exercise, the old storeroom was no longer empty. From the outside, no one would have known what had begun there. The barrels still stood along the walls. The broken shelves still leaned where they had leaned for years, and no weapons lay on the floor that looked like departure. but anyone who looked closely would have noticed the traces. Chalk on stone, wear from ropes, a small notch in an old lock, sand carried in by boots. A room does not immediately forget when people begin to use it differently. Alina stood in the doorway and looked inside. Mara was already there. She knelt over the rough map they had drawn the evening before on a piece of old cloth. The Arden River was marked with a narrow dark line, the old mill with a cross, the bridge with 2 short strokes. Farther east, everything grew less certain, not because no one could draw, but because knowledge grew thin there. Jonna sat on a barrel and checked the string of her bow. She did it slowly and without haste. Berit had a lock before her and was taking it apart with a calm that impressed Alina almost more than strength. Elder and Irma sorted bandages, herbs, cloths, and small knives. Nella checked pieces of rope and tied knots. She immediately untied again. Mela carried a straw sack from one wall to the other and let 2 younger women watch how one held weight with the body rather than only with the arms. Leo stood with Sana and listened as she explained which sentences in the most recent letters had sounded strangely alike. Taren was not there. Alina noticed it at once.
"Where is Taren?"
she asked. Mara lifted her gaze.
"On the road since sunrise."
Alina stepped in.
"Where?"
He wanted to check the wagon road toward the old redoubt.
"He said he would be back before midday."
Alina looked to the door.
"Did he discuss that with me?"
Mara was silent for a moment. No. The room grew quieter without anyone stopping their work. Alina felt something tighten inside her. It was not anger alone. Anger would have been easier. This was heavier, because Taren was not just some man with too much courage. He was useful. He understood roads, wagons, disguise, and precisely for that reason, he should have known that an independent decision endangered the entire structure. "When he returns, he speaks with me first," Alina said.
"And if he does not return?"
Jonna asked. Alina looked at her. Jonna had not meant the question cruelly. She had simply reached the place the others were still avoiding.
"Then we learn from it before someone else makes the same mistake,"
Alina answered. No one said anything. That was better than agreement. The morning hours passed with work that would not appear in any song. No one practiced grand strikes. No one gave a speech. Berit showed how to open an old lock without destroying it. It took time, and 2 women grew impatient, until Berit lowered the tool and said that whoever mistook haste for strength should stay home. After that, they listened more closely. Irma had Rena apply a bandage and immediately undid it again.
"Too tight,"
she said. Rena clenched her teeth.
"Then at least it holds. Then the arm dies under your care, and later you can explain to him that you meant well."
Rena flushed but said nothing. She tied the bandage again, this time more slowly. Alina watched her. The anger was still there, but it no longer pushed blindly forward. It had met friction. Perhaps that was the beginning of usefulness. Around midday, Taren returned. They heard the wagon in the courtyard before they saw it. The wheels ran unevenly. A horse snorted. Alina left the storeroom at once, Mara close behind her. In the courtyard, Taren brought the wagon to a halt, climbed down, and reached for the side before he was fully standing. There was blood on his shoulder. Not much. Enough. Alina went toward him.
"What happened?"
"An arrow," Taren said, "grazed me." Irma had already appeared behind Alina. "Sit down. It is nothing. Then you will be able to stand quickly again after I have seen it." Taren sat on the edge of the wagon. Irma cut open the cloth at his shoulder. The wound was shallow, but clean enough to make clear that the arrow had not missed by much. Alina waited until Irma pressed the bleeding down. "You went without an assignment," she said. Taren looked up at her. "I had a reason." "Perhaps you did." You did not have permission." A few people in the courtyard kept their distance, but Alina noticed that they were listening. Taren drew air through his teeth as Irma cleaned the wound.
"I saw something. That almost kept you from bringing it back."
He lowered his gaze.
"Yes."
It was not an apology, but it was better than defiance.
"What did you see?"
Alina asked. Taren waited until Irma had put on the bandage. Then he rose more slowly than he would have otherwise. "There are no open posts on the road to the old redoubt," he said. "But there are signs, broken branches, freshly trodden earth, wagon tracks that do not fit our wheels. Someone uses that stretch, but not regularly."
"Who?"
Mara asked. "I saw 2 men," Taren answered. "Not in our colors. Not in the Alliance's colors either. They did not move like traders."
"Armed?"
John asked. "Yes, short weapons under their cloaks. One had a bow."
"And they saw you,"
Alina said. "Too late for them," Taren answered. "Early enough for me." Alina looked at his bandaged shoulder.
"That is not a success," she said quietly.
Taren held her gaze.
"It is a message."
"Then we treat it as one, not as a victory." "Then we treat it as one, not as a victory." Alina led him into the storeroom. The others followed. No one asked questions until the door was closed. Taren stepped to the map and pointed to the area beyond the old mill.
"Here," he said. "Not directly at the bridge. Behind it."
"The bridge is only the visible point. Whoever watches there draws eyes to himself. The real movement lies south of it." Mara narrowed her eyes. "There are old shepherd paths there." "Yes," Taren said. "And they are being used." "By those holding the king?" Leo asked.
"I do not know," Taren replied, "but it fits what we have seen so far."
Sana stepped closer. In her hand she held 2 letters. "Something else fits as well." Alina looked at her.
"In 3 letters from different hands. The same place is not named,"
Sana said. "At first that sounds like nothing, but all 3 describe a detour. One writes that they passed an abandoned tower. One mentions a stream with red stone. One writes of a hill where no fires were allowed." Mara looked down at the map. "The red stream lies beyond the old redoubt."
"And the tower?"
Alina asked.
"If it is the tower I think it is, then it does not lie on the official route,"
Mara said. The room grew quieter, not from fear, but because separate pieces had begun to fit together. Sana placed the letters on the barrel. None of the writers says where they were taken, but all 3 described movement away from the front and away from the main roads. Alina stepped closer to the map.
"Prisoners."
"Possibly," Sana said. "Perhaps wounded men, perhaps supplies. But if one transports a king, one does not take a road where every messenger can see him." Serafina joined them later. She entered the storeroom, listened to everything, and asked very little. Alina had come to value that in her. Serafina did not ask questions to show that she was thinking. She asked when an answer was needed. "How certain is this?" she asked at last. Alina looked at the map, then at Taren, Mara, and Sana. Not certain enough for a departure, certain enough not to keep only waiting. "The council will see that differently," Serafina said. "The council sees everything differently once it requires movement." Serafina accepted the sentence.
"Then it will have an opportunity to say so aloud tonight."
Alina understood.
"You mean to call the council?"
"Yes, and this time you will not merely listen." The great hall was fuller that evening than it had been at the last meetings. Not only the inner council had come. 2 stewards from the villages sat at the side as well, along with the old captain of the gate guard, who could hardly stand for long anymore, but still knew better than most how unrest smelled. Serafina had invited them deliberately. The more witnesses there were, the harder it became for the council to dismiss Alina's work as secret play. Alina did not stand at the edge. She stood beside the map. That was a difference. Everyone noticed. Serafina opened the meeting.
"We have new indications of movement east of the old redoubt," she said. "They come from reports, letters, and direct observation."
The Master of Stores looked at Alina at once. "Direct observation?"
"Yes,"
Alina said.
"By whom?"
"By people who know roads." "So by people you sent?"
"Yes."
The word fell calmly. One councilman placed his hand on the edge of the table. One councilman placed his hand on the edge of the table. "Then you confirm that you ordered reconnaissance without the council's decision?" Alina looked at him.
"I confirm that I tried to find out where our king and our men might be."
"That is not the same as authority," he replied.
"No,"
Alina said. "It is more urgent." A soft murmur moved through the hall. The Master of Stores turned to Serafina.
"Majesty, this cannot continue."
"If every person sends people out at their own discretion, we lose every order."
"It is not every person,"
Serafina said calmly.
"It is Alina. That is precisely why it is dangerous."
Alina knew what he meant. Not because she was insignificant, because she no longer was. The old captain of the gate guard cleared his throat.
"May I speak?"
Serafina nodded.
"When a gate burns,"
he said,
"one does not first ask who is allowed to carry water.
One remembers afterward who did." The Master of Stores grimaced. "With respect, that is a fine image, but not a principle of governance."
"No," said the captain, "it is experience."
Alina looked to him. He did not hold her gaze long, but the brief glance was enough. The priest folded his hands. "We still have no confirmed certainty of where the king is being held. A departure would be reckless."
"I am not yet speaking of a departure,"
Alina said. "But you are preparing one."
"Yes."
This time the silence was more pronounced. Alina let it stand. "I prepare," she continued, "because we cannot begin only once an unmistakable letter arrives. Every day we lose then may be a day the prisoners do not have." "And what do you want?" the Master of Stores asked. "An army of women." The question was meant to be more mocking than he probably intended to show. Alina did not answer immediately. She looked around the room, not searching, but measuring. "I want people who can carry when men can no longer walk. I want wagons prepared before wounded men lie on them. I want bandages before blood needs them. I want roads before we stand before a blocked way. I want scouts before we walk into foreign eyes. If you want to call that an army, then do so. I call it preparation." Serafina stood beside her without intervening. The Master of Stores looked to the Queen. "And you allow this?" Serafina held his gaze.
"I require it."
The hall went silent.
"We will not march out blindly,"
Serafina said.
"We will not strip Ardenthal bare. We will not seek a battle, but we will be prepared if a road opens. And if that road comes, I will not allow us to lose it, because the council is still searching for a phrasing that makes it sound less dangerous."
No one spoke at once. Alina felt something shift in the room. The council was not defeated. It never was. But it had been confronted. The Master of Stores lowered his gaze to the map.
"And if the road never comes?"
"This time," Alina answered. "Then we will have trained people who can better protect our land, better carry our wounded, and better know our roads. Then we will have lost nothing but the illusion that waiting is a strategy." The old captain nodded slowly. One steward from the riverbank village did the same. The Master of Stores remained silent. Serafina did not end the meeting with a long closing speech. She assigned tasks. The captain was to examine which guards could be spared without weakening the gate. The stewards were to report supplies that could be transported. The master of stores was to present lists, not objections. The priest was to have rooms prepared for additional wounded, should any come. When the council members left, Alina remained with Serafina.
"You did not reject the word army,"
Serafina said.
"No."
"Deliberately?" Alina looked at the map.
"If I reject it too quickly, they will use it against me. If I accept it too quickly, they will use that too."
Serafina nodded. "Good." A moment passed. "Taren was wounded," Alina said. "I know. Because he went on his own. Yes, I should have bound him more strongly." Serafina looked at her. "Perhaps. Perhaps he would have done what he did anyway. That does not make it easier."
"No,"
Serafina said.
"but leadership does not become easier just because one finds the right mistake."
Alina carried that sentence with her. Later, she went once more to the old storeroom. The 10 were there, together with some of the women from the larger group. No one asked what the council had decided. They saw it in her face.
"We continue,"
Alina said. No one cheered.
"That was good."
"From tomorrow on, we train every day. Not longer than the work in the land allows, but regularly. Each group receives a task. Whoever carries, learns to carry. Whoever binds, learns to bind. Whoever goes, learns to turn back. Whoever can use weapons shows those who must learn. Whoever cannot wield a weapon learns how not to stand in the way when others do." Berit crossed her arms. "This will be ugly."
"Then let it be ugly here,"
Alina said. "Not first out there." Jonna nodded. Rena stood at the back of the room. She did not look disappointed that she was not part of the fast group. She looked attentive. That was better. Alina stepped to the rough map. "We do not know enough yet," she said, "but we know more than yesterday. And when the day comes that we must go, I will not take anyone who only believes they are ready." Milar raised her hand.
"And who decides when that day comes?"
Alina looked to Serafina, who stood in the doorway. The queen gave her no answer. So Alina answered herself.
"I do."
The word was short, but not artificially placed. It had to be short, because it did not allow division. Mela nodded. No one objected. Late that evening, Alina stood in the west tower. She thought of Taren and the arrow that had only grazed him. She thought of Arvid and the men being held somewhere beyond the old redoubt. She thought of the 10 in the storeroom and of the many who did not yet know that they had become part of something larger. The decision was not yet the departure, but it was the threshold before it. And Alina knew that she had crossed that threshold